All right, now before I bring the Pinto into Maya, what I want to do is create a little base mesh for the horse. So I'm going to go ahead and like just trace this, and I'm going to use my pencil tool. So I'm going to go to right here and use my pencil tool. What I like about the pencil tool is you can sort of just pick up where you left off with your drawing. So if I'm basically drawing a vector shape for the horse here, and this is going to be like a little outline, right? What's cool about the pencil tool is as you're drawing, right, you can just kind of pick up where you left off. I'm not trying to like adhere to this exactly or anything. I'm just trying to get this about accurate. And, you know, so just something like this that's going to be our little, and normally I would use a tablet for this, but right now I'm just using a mouse. And I'm just kind of drawing the outline of this. When you do use this pencil tool, it will give you a very dense vector, but we'll fix that in a moment, right? So I'm just kind of doing the outline here with the pencil tool. Right, so just something like this. And then this is going to give us a very dense mesh, right? So if I add the same color, we get something like that. And if I look at like my points for this, right, there's a lot of points. So I'm going to go to Object, Path, Simplify, and then I'm just going to kind of simplify this to be a smoother stroke. Right, so we're going to go all the way down to smooth like that. Maybe something around there, right? So now if we look at the points here, we can see that we have a lot fewer points with this. So, and I'm going to bring these in as two separate objects. I don't want to bring them in as the same object. I want them to be two separate objects. So we're gonna just start with the we'll start with the Pinto, right? So we'll bring the Pinto in. So I'm just gonna Control C this, and then we'll go into Maya and do our SVG and paste and delete that and that's it, right? Well, so we'll finish working on this a little bit later. And then I'm going to bring in my horse. So just select that, Control C, and go into Maya and make another SVG here and paste that. And with this, I really just want to get a base mesh that I can kind of sculpt. So I am going to increase the curve resolution on this. Let's turn that off. And I'm going to let's just go ahead and delete the interior face here or the back face. And then I'm going to retopologize this thing. I don't care if it looks too crazy, this one, because we're going to sculpt it, so it's going to look a little bit crazy. So for this one, we're going to go to Mesh, retopologize. Let's set our target face count to be about 1,000. I don't want to get too crazy with it. And retopologize. That's fine, right? That's all I really need here for this guy to be able to start sculpting it. So I do want to kind of scale it to size though, because I want it to be about the right size. So probably somewhere around here. All right, so next we're going to take this into Mudbox and we're going to do some sculpting. So I'll give you a little crash course into Mudbox and how to use it. And then I'll probably time lapse the sculpt because that may take me some time, but I'll explain how I sculpt in my process and stuff. And then we'll do a quick time lapse of the sculpt and then bring it back into Maya. All right, so now to bring this into Mudbox, what we could do is you could go to select your object, make sure you delete the history on it and all that good stuff, and then go to send to Mudbox. Now, this only works if you have the same version of Mudbox to Maya. So make sure if you have Maya 26, make sure you have Mudbox 26. Sometimes this doesn't work though, so we're going to do it a different way. I want to show you how to do it a different way so you don't sort of run into this issue. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to do export selection, and we're going to export this as you could do FBX or USD. We're going to do OBJ. So I'm going to export this as an OBJ. And we're just going to throw it into the desktop for now. And I'm just going to call this Pinto horse and export selection. Now, if you don't see the OBJ option, go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and just do a search up here for OBJ. And make sure you have OBJ export turned on, and then you should be able to export as an OBJ. Once you have that, we will open up Mudbox, and we're going to go to File, Import. And we're going to select our OBJ file, which is on my desktop. Pinto horse OBJ. And there is my OBJ Pinto horse. Now, just a little crash course into Mudbox. This navigates pretty much the same exact way as Maya. So you hold down Alt left to rotate around, Alt middle, which will pan you around, which in my situation, I have that hotkey changed. So I'll show you why here in a second, because when you're using a pen, a stylus, which is what I'm using now, you can't, there's no middle mouse click on my stylus button. So I just have my hotkey changed to Alt Shift for pan. And to do that, you just go to Windows, Hotkeys, and we can go down to pan. Pan. And I just changed that to Shift Alt left mouse button. So my pan is left mouse is Alt Shift the pan, right? So that's it for the navigation, right? It's pretty easy, pretty much the same as Maya. Now, the way that sculpting works, and this is the way that sculpting works for pretty much any sculpting software, is it works off of subdivisions. Now, if I hit W on my keyboard, you can see that we see the wireframe now. So I see the wireframe when I hit W, and that's a feature that I will probably often turn on and off. And then before I do anything, just to kind of show you, if I go to my sculpt tool here, if I hold down my B key, B for brush, that will change my brush size. And if I hold down M for magnitude, that changes the strength of my brush. So just with the default settings, if I do something like that, we can see that we're drawing, right? And now I currently have symmetry turned off. It should be off by default, but I'm going to come over here to my brush settings and just turn symmetry off. So you can basically see what's happening whenever I use my brush. Now, the way that sculpting works in most apps is subdivision levels. So if we hit Shift D, that will go to a new subdivision level. So as I try to sculpt now, we see that we have more resolution that we can sculpt at. And as I increase through subdivision levels, we get more and more resolution to sculpt, right? And again, I'm using my pen tablet. So that's basically it, right? And we want to subdivide, and we can move up and down these subdivision levels with our page up and page down keys on our keyboard, right? You can also go to mesh, and you can go up and down subdivision levels here. If you're working on like a 75% keyboard that doesn't have a page up and page down, you can change those hotkeys to something else if you want. And that's basically the crash course of Mudbox. Now you have a few tools here, and quite honestly, the only tools that I really use in most cases is Sculpt, Smooth, which in most cases I don't even need to switch to the Smooth tool. I can just hold down Shift, and that will smooth. And I'm actually just going to go through and kind of smooth all of this out to begin with. I'm just going to smooth all of my hard corners, right? Just something like that. So just holding down Shift to smooth that. That's all I'm doing there. And I will use grab. Grab just allows you to kind of move things around like that, right? So I can grab parts of this and just kind of move it around, right? So if I want to make, the tail go in a little bit like this, I can just sort of grab that, smooth it out, move it down. Same, like there's this hoof here should be kind of behind the other one. So if I want to move that down a little bit, something like that, I can do that with the grab tool and then kind of move this one back up. So a lot of our sculpting is going to be done with that grab tool as well, right? And then pinch, I will use pinch occasionally. That would be good to kind of put a crease there in between those two. But I will sculpt for a little bit at real time. And then I'll, once I kind of explain everything, I will speed it up and do a time lapse for the remainder of it. All right, so everyone's going to deal with this sculpting a little bit differently. I would probably not even do it the same way twice, honestly. But I want to be clear that this isn't the only way to do this. This isn't the only approach. It's just kind of the way that I'm doing it at the moment. And so what I'm going to start out doing is just subdividing it quite a few times in order to get some detail that I can sculpt in like this. And I'm going to go to my fall offs, and typically I just pretty much just use the regular sculpt brush, but I will change my fall offs from time to time. And to start out with, I really like using this square fall off. So I'm going to start with that one, but I do want to decrease my magnitude a little bit, right? So like when I'm painting or sculpting, that's just a big change that I don't want. So I'm going to hold down M and reduce my magnitude quite a bit just to be able to get something like that. And I am using a pressure sensitive pen stylus. That's very important here for this. So, and I'm just going to kind of start sculpting out some shapes, right? And the way that I typically like to do this is just kind of over sculpt. So I'll do something like this. And then I hold down Shift and I kind of smooth it out, right? So, and we're kind of doing a relief here, right? So it's not like full 3D form. It's just kind of a relief. So that's kind of what we're going for here. And yeah, so if we want to kind of push in instead of pull out, we can hold down Control, and that will kind of push in certain areas. Like if I want to push in around where the main is going to be, I can hold down Control. So I'm not, trying to get like a masterpiece here by any means. I just want to kind of get the form right, and I'm just kind of slowly build up these forms and over smooth them. And there's situations like right here where I probably want to push this in a little bit, and yeah, so that's basically all there is to it for the beginning phases. And basically I'm just going to kind of keep working at it until I achieve something close to what I'm seeing here in the reference. So again, I like to kind of over sculpt, and then I'll go back in and kind of smooth things out as much as I can. And if you want to make big changes, right, like say I really want to kind of smooth this out here, I'm going to move down in subdivision level. So I'm hitting page down, and then I can kind of smooth this area out right here. And I'll do that in a few areas. And then I can slowly move back up in layers and levels with page up. Right. And occasionally I may want to use my grab tool to kind of move things around, like the little, I guess that would be like the elbow. I can come in here and kind of move that back out. And that will also help emphasize that these are like separate pieces here, right? So sometimes in the process of getting it to look good, it will kind of look terrible, right? But this is basically what it's all about here. Just slowly kind of building up the forms and shapes. Now, just to show you, before I jump into a time lapse, before I show you the other tools, or before I show you the time lapse, I want to show you a few of the other tools that I use. But like I said, mostly I just use Sculpt, and I switch the fall offs. So I mainly use like this square fall off, and I will use this sharp fall off as well to create like creases. So with this sharp fall off, we're going to get something like that. But again, I can hold down Control, and I can get kind of a crease built in. So something like that. So if I want to emphasize that crease around the neck or under the jawline, I can use this sharp fall off, and maybe around the muzzle and the ears. And I can come down here and kind of use this to separate out the two front legs. And again, I like to over sculpt and then smooth back out. Right here, I can use it to kind of separate out these two legs. And again, over sculpt, smooth, over sculpt, smooth. So I will use this tool quite a bit. And then I also use the pinch function quite a bit. And what that will do is just kind of pinch these two sections together. If I turn on my wireframe and move a little bit closer, let me move up a level, and I pinch this together, you can kind of see what it's doing there, right? It's just pinching those two little creases together like that, and then I can smooth them out more. So I'm very slowly just going to work up the definition and shape of this, just using those tools. I'm not really going to use any of my other tools yet. If I do, I will stop and explain them. But that's basically it right? I'm just going to use those tools. I'm going to use the sculpt tool with different fall offs and the grab tool occasionally to kind of readjust things and move things around. You don't need, a lot of times when people first get into sculpting, they think it's all about the brushes and what you can do with, like you need these special brushes to be a good sculptor. That is not at all true, right? Not even close to true. You can do a lot with a minimal amount, and in fact, a lot of really high, as opposed to using ZBrush, a lot of really high end sculptors like Ian Spriggs, who does like super really realistic character sculpts or human likenesses. He uses Mudbox because it's just super simple. A lot of like really high end sculptors use Mudbox just for its simplicity, rather than using something like ZBrush, because ZBrush has a learning curve, and it can get kind of overwhelming with how many different features and stuff it has. So if you just want to start out getting into sculpting, and you find ZBrush kind of overwhelming, Mudbox is a great alternative. Even though Autodesk hasn't really done any updates to Mudbox over the years. Not any major updates anyway. It's a very simple program for sculpting and very easy to use. So from here, I'm just going to jump into a time lapse where I start, sculpting this a little bit more, and then when I'm done doing like the overall sculpt, then we'll talk about how to prepare this to go back into Maya. All right, now at this point, I'm pretty happy where this is. I don't need to put a lot of time and detail into that. Well, first of all, like the actual chrome emblem isn't super detailed, right? It's kind of just vague and lumpy. So I'm okay with just doing something vague and lumpy. I'm not, necessarily trying to make a highly detailed, realistic horse sculpture. But, from a distance, right? So like from that far away, this looks pretty good, right? There is a couple things I want to do to this before I bring it back into Maya. And the first one is to retopologize. So I want to try to get this to a level, if I were to go back down to its lowest level at this point, look at the wireframe, it's very basic, right? And as I come up in levels, right, we're getting pretty detailed. I want to try to retopologize this in a way where I can keep a lot of the details at a lower subdivision level, so there's not as many polygons in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it, and if you hit your up and down arrow keys, moving up and down, you can see that your highest subdivision level is currently we're at about almost 300,000 tries at our highest level, or polys. That's quite a bit. So what I want to do, and at our lowest level, if we go down to our lowest level, we're at about 1,000. So I want to get this maybe somewhere, maybe like 5,000 to see if we can get a good amount of detail into it. So let's go up to the highest level. And I'm going to go to Mesh, retopologize, and we're going to do a new operation. And my target base count, we'll actually leave that at 3,000. We'll see how the result is. We can always move up and down subdivision levels. And I always like to set my face uniformity to something like 0.5. If it'll let me, say 0.5. For some reason, it's not letting me type 0.5 in there. I think it may have numlock turned off, but we'll do 0.5. We're not using symmetry, so everything else we can just sort of leave at the default levels and hit retopologize. And give that a minute to do its thing. Sometimes this can take, sometimes it goes pretty quickly. Sometimes it could take quite a bit of time. It just depends on how complex your model is. But it shouldn't take too much time. See, once it gets started, it goes pretty quickly. All right, so once that is done retopologizing, you can see now that we can move down to a lower subdivision level, like somewhere around 2, right? Even at a level of 1, we're at like 13,000, but at a level of 2, we're at about 53,000. That's pretty high, but I think this is kind of all the detail that we really need. Right? Something at like this level right here. I think I'm okay with that. Very vague looking model. And I think I'm okay with this being our final result at around at around 53,000. Right? If I go up to, I don't want it to be 200,000. That's a bit high. Now, if you're using ZBrush, you could use something like Decimation Master, which would really sort of optimize it quite a bit. The other thing that I could try, and actually let me try this. I'm going to delete this one and we're going to redo it. So Let's go to delete object. And the nice thing is that it keeps your original mesh here. So I'm going to select my same mesh there, and we're going to try to retopologize it again with slightly different settings. This time I'm going to set my face uniformity down all the way to 0. So ideally this is going to optimize our geometry as much as possible and not worry about having uniform poly count. So this should give us a little bit more optimized geometry over uniform size. So let's just jump that down all the way to 0. And let's do our base count this time at 2000. And we'll try again. Okay, now let's see what we got here. Still give us pretty uniform subdivisions, but let's see if we go down to level 2, we're at about 23,000, so that's a lot better. But we don't quite have the detail there that we had originally. Let's see, would I be okay with it at a level like this? I think I probably would. So yeah, I think I'm just going to bring it in at level 2, which is at about 23,000. So from here, once again, I could try just going to File, Send to Maya. That may work. Let's select our model first. Otherwise, I could just re-export it out as an OBJ and then import it back into Maya. So let's see, I have here my scene with my emblems. So I'm just going to hit Control S to save that before I do this because I don't want to crash it. I'm going to select my model here and I'm going to go to File, Send to Maya, and I'm going to add selected to current scene. And we want to send meshes at current level. And then that will send that mesh over. And I can take this one and move that to the side. And there is our very dense model for our little horse there. So this guy, I can delete this guy now. I'm actually going to, we can save this if we want, but I'm kind of happy with what we have. So I know it seems crazy, but I'm just going to close this without saving. I could always resculpt it, not a big deal, right? So the one thing I do want to do is kind of squeeze this down a little bit in this direction, like that. And that will actually kind of preserve our details a little bit more. And let's assign our standard surface to that. Right, so I think overall that's going to look pretty good. I'm going to move that over a little bit. Actually, let's not squeeze it down so much. I'm going to move this over here like that. Because we still got to do some things to our Pinto text here a little bit. And the last thing that I may do here is just select this entire outer edge like this and just extrude it back. like that. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I like that. Maybe just something like that. Looks pretty good there. Okay, so we got that. Let me go ahead and save my project here. And now let's give the bevel treatment to our Pinto text. So I'm going to we're going to do the same thing we did before. So we're going to take it from our side view here, and we're going to delete all of the faces except for just this original face. And we need to retopologize this. So we're going to go to, let's do mesh retopologize, and yeah, we'll use all of the same settings, retopologize, and see what that turns into. Not bad. I think that's overall pretty good. Now, this one in particular has a little bit of a weird sort of bevel to it, right? It kind of bevels down, but then there's kind of a lip and edge over it a little bit. So I want to try to make that. I want to try to get that on our model. So what I'm going to start with here is just a regular bevel, or a regular extrude. Right, so I'm going to select everything here, all of our outer edges. And we're going to do an extrude function with some thickness and a little bit of an offset like this. There's a few little issues that I see here, mainly with the P and our curved shapes from our retopologize. And that's because we didn't, so let me back up a little bit before I retopologize. And let's go ahead and extrude. Just back like this a little bit. So I'm going to do this and then retopologize. That should give us a little bit better results whenever we smooth. Okay, so now we'll delete these faces. And the reason I'm deleting these faces is just because I have more control now if I do this with our extrude function. There's a little bit of some weird stuff in here that I need to fix. But so before I do that, let me back up and let's see if we can tweak our retopology a little bit. All right, so let's do like a face uniformity of 0.2. That's a little bit better. Let's drop down our face count. I see I'm mainly looking like right in here, which we don't really seem to have that. That's kind of ugly there. So I'm basically just tweaking these settings here until I get something that kind of looks good all around. This area right here is giving me a lot of problems, so I'll probably have to go in and kind of fix that, and this area right here as well. Let's do edges by angle, and I'm going to set them to 90. That really didn't do much there. Let's set our base count back down to something like 1000. Let's do our tolerance to 50%. That really didn't do anything. Let's set this something to like 3000, because that's about what we have anyway, is 3000. That's a little bit better. This is still very messy down here. See how this is sort of giving me a straight line here on this edge? That's what I don't want to do. Let's see, let's just do a, when I turn off preserve hard edges, it actually looks a lot better in most areas. So let's play around with the target face count here. And that's not good. So yeah, it's just going to take some tweaking until you sort of get the result that you want out of all of this stuff. And there may be some situations where you just have to kind of like manually fix stuff too, which may be what we need to do. Another thing that we could try as well, let's back up. To before we did any of this stuff. Again, I think it's very important that you guys are kind of getting to see the entire process, like flaws and everything, right? So I think that's an important thing to see. So I'm going to try just triangulating this, and rather than retopologizing, let's just grab everything and go to mesh, triangulate, and that will just give me this very triangulated mesh. And let's see if we can just go from here with something like this. The thing I'm worried about here is that it's going to give us a lot of weird stuff when we extrude it back. So let me show you what I mean by this. If I were to just take this and extrude this back like this and hit smooth, we're going to get a lot of like these weird edges pulling around, like right here. So if you do something like this, the key is going to be adding a nice tight edge loop around the outside so it doesn't pull on all of the edges like that. So we'll try to I'll try to show you that. So let's go ahead and do our extrusion around the outside. Okay, so we'll just do extrude with some thickness and offset. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something similar that we did to the Ford, and I'm just going to offset extrude like this, just to give us a really tight edge loop around the outside. Now there is areas I'm going to have to kind of fix, like right in these corners here. Let's see if we can just do a really tight edge, something like that. Maybe even smaller. So we go to, let's go 0.05. Right, that gives us a really, really tight edge around everything, and all of our corners should be okay. Yeah, I think that will work, and it doesn't make our objects that much thicker. So just a really tight offset extrusion to give us an edge loop around everything. And then we can extrude back, and we're still going to have things we need to clean up, but it's going to be a little bit easier to do. So I will show you that. So I think what I'm actually going to do here at this point is extrude again with an offset. So I'm going to do extrude again with an offset like this. And again, we'll do something fairly low, like point. Let's do like 0.1. And then all the corners here that are kind of bunching up, I'm just going to take those and do merge to center, which is under edit mesh, merge to center. Right, and you may want to like move them around a little bit if they're off, but I'm just going to kind of go around and look at all of my corners right here and do merge to center. So any corner that I have where things are kind of bunching up together, like this, we're going to do merge to center. You know, you may want to move them, adjust them, so you get like an even thing going on here. All right, like these, we can take. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here, right? We've got this guy that's kind of a stray. Where do you belong? And where do you belong? Sometimes this stuff happens with this this tool. You got to kind of figure out where you came from. A lot of times, just by moving them around, you can kind of figure out where they sort of came from. And I think we can probably just merge these with this one. We've got a little bit of a weird thing going on right there, but I can fix that as well. So let's go ahead and merge these. And then I'm just going to kind of see if I can just get away with moving this one around a little bit like that. Okay, and let's grab these guys, merge to center. And I think that's it. I think that's the only ones. Let's go ahead and merge these two, because I'm just anticipating those will be an issue. All right, so now I want to grab all of my interior edges. And I'm just going to move them back a little bit like that. And now this should give us a little bit of just a round surface, right? Still got some areas where we need to kind of work on here, but we'll fix those. Right, see how it's kind of stretching out in this area where all of those merge corners were? So we'll need to kind of fix these two areas, but that's not going to be that big of a deal. This one doesn't actually look too bad, so I'm not super worried about that one. But our little tail here, right? So I want to take the little tail here. So I'm going to go from this edge to this edge and this edge to this edge. Actually, let's not do this edge. And I'm just going to kind of, actually, let's do this top one. And I just kind of want to move that. And then we'll do bottom one, move that. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust these a little bit. And now I'm only going to adjust them in the y-axis because I don't want to mess up their placement in this axis, right? I don't want them to kind of change their depth, so to speak. So I'm just going to kind of adjust them like this. Right, we can smooth it to check it, and that looks all right. Aside from those issues there, I want to kind of bring these up a little bit more like this. Something like that. And then we're going to do another extrude. I want to do, there's like another lip there. So I'm going to do another extrude with all of our outer edges. We'll probably extrude a few times this time. So I'm going to extrude straight out. So just an offset. We're just going to do an, let's do, yeah, local Z offset like that to give it a little bit of a, maybe 0.1. And then we'll do another one again, extrude, and this time thickness. And then I'm going to do extrude thickness one more time. That doesn't want to extrude the way that I want it to, so I'm just going to switch to my move tool and just move it straight back like that. And now when we smooth it, that should give us a nice little, this little lip around everything. And some of this I can kind of clean up a little bit, right? So if I don't like how that curves, I can just control delete those. So give a little bit more of a fluid curve there. And anytime you have something like right here where it's rounding, you know, like in this situation where that's kind of rounding off, but I don't want it to round off, what I can do is I can just sort of add some support edges there, right? So I'm going to delete these edges, and I'm going to add a support edge there, a support edge there, and then I'm going to connect these up to these guys. Something like that. Maybe even okay. And now we get more of a sharp edge like that. Just move this around a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Just need to fix these corners here. So how we're going to fix these corners is I'm going to take a few of my edges here, and we're just going to go straight down with them. So I'm going to take these triangles that I made here earlier, and we're going to try to just go straight down with them. Somewhere like this. And this should give us a little bit of a support edge, right? So we get a nice corner right there. And I could even take this a step further, and let's delete these two edges. And then I'm going to go straight down with these. So basically what we're doing here is fixing that issue that we had earlier with those things bunching up. We just kind of waited to fix that until we're a little bit further along, right? So now when I smooth it, I get a nice sharp corner right there. So we just need to do the same for this area here. Right? And just move that down a little bit. Okay, so multi-cut, and I'm just going to go straight down over here. Now we're in vertex mode. Let's switch to edge mode. See how it's not letting me sort of bring that multi-cut all the way over? Oops, and I just accidentally deleted that edge. It's probably because I had that edge selected. So let's try this again in edge mode. So if it's not letting you do this, and again, for some reason it's wanting to keep putting us in face mode, we can just sort of do it one at a time or slice it like that. We can try something like that. That doesn't work. Let's just try this bottom one then. So let's try this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete these edges there like that. And then I'm going to try to make some new edges here. So I'm going to make 2 edges there. Or 1 edge maybe. Now let's see if I can get it to connect up to one of these. Yeah, there we go. Oops. It just doesn't want to connect for some reason. let's just move on to this edge and see if we can fix this one. I find that a lot of times if I'm struggling with like this corner, for example, and it just doesn't want to work for me, if I just move to something else and come back to it, a lot of times it will work after a while. Just try not to let yourself get too frustrated with it. So just move on to a different part and then come back to it. So I'm going to try the same method where we're just going to delete those edges, and then I'm going to make a couple edges here. See, it's not letting me make one there, but we'll go ahead and try to fix this. Yeah, see, that's not going to let me fix it. I wonder if I can just do a triangle here. Yeah, so we'll just do a triangle there. So that will help hold that shape in. And now we just need to deal with this one down here. So let's see if I can add some edge loops. Right, so now it's letting me add another edge loop there, and one there. Okay. So again, sometimes if you just move on to another area and come back to the problematic area, everything works out and you can fix it. Right? So there we go. Now I could, just like one last thing here, let's go ahead and take this all of our inner edges again, and I'm just going to move them back to make it the whole thing just a little bit thicker. All right, so I'm just going to move the whole thing back a little bit like that to be about as thick as the horse is. And then the horse, I actually want to take this edge and I want to flatten it out again. So I'm going to just select this entire edge and scale it in like that, and then I'll move it in. So it's about the same thickness as our lettering. All right, so now we can take these two and I'm just going to combine them together. So we'll do mesh combine. And let's just grab everything and add just a standard surface to it for now. And there is our emblems. So what I'm going to do now is select these. Let's delete all our history, freeze our transforms, all that stuff. And select it. And let's name this one Pinto. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to File, Save Selection. Save selection, where's it at? Export selection. So I'm just going to go to File, Export Selection. Now, what this will do as opposed to Save Scene. When you save scene, it saves your cameras, your materials, all this other stuff. I don't want to save all that stuff. And when I import this into my main car scene, I don't want to bring in extra cameras and I don't want to bring in extra materials and things like that, right? So I'm just going to select these and we're going to go to File, Export Selection. And I'm just going to export them as a binary file, right? And we're going to name these, let's make sure that our scene or project is set to Ford Pinto, wherever it may be. There it is, Ford Pinto, set the project. And let me just go to File, Export Selection again. So now we're in the Ford Pinto scenes, and we're just going to save that as a binary file, and I'm just going to save it over my existing emblems file, right? So in this way, because I'm doing export selection, again, it's not going to save cameras and materials and all that stuff. It's just saving the objects, and that's it. So now we'll do export selection. Do I want to replace it? Yes. And then I'm going to open up our car scene. So I'm going to open scene, and we'll do our Ford Pinto scene. We'll open that up. And then we're going to go to File, Import, Emblems. And there is our emblems down here, right? So we have all 3 of our emblems. And we're going to try to do a cool render with these. I'm going to do something like this, and let's go to our material. So let's assign a new material to these. Assign favorite material, and we'll do open PBR. And then for presets, we're going to do Chrome. And let's do a render and see if this looks cool. Now, I was messing around. I was playing around in here, and I added a little light under my car to get kind of a neat effect. So that's what you see right there. And I think let's just cancel this. And I'm gonna delete that light. All right, so let's just do something like this. This weird pixelization that we're seeing here, this is in my HDRI image. So a little trick here for trying to get rid of this if we want to try to get rid of that. So let me stop my render here. And what I want to do is go to that. We want to go to our lighting, and we'll go to our dome light. And I want to go to the image node that this is in, and we want to blur it a little bit. So I'm going to turn on pre-filter, and I can try increasing this a little bit, and it may or may not work, but let's see if it will blur this a little bit. And no, it doesn't look like it is, but that's all right. I think this is good enough for a thumbnail. And let's see, let's move it around a little bit. Whoops. Kind of weird how it's. All right. I think that's going to make a pretty nice thumbnail. All right, I'm not sure what we're going to do in the next video, but I'm going to end this one here. The next video will probably maybe work on like the muffler exhaust or something like that, or just kind of place the emblems. We may just end up be doing a bunch of little things in the next video. But yeah, from here we'll jump into the next video. And again, if you're following along, you're awesome. I would love to see the progress you're making on your car, whether you're modeling the same one I am or whether you're doing something a little bit different. I would love to see your progress. I do have a Discord channel in my links, so jump into my Discord, show me what you're working on, let me know your thoughts if you any suggestions, right? Anything at all. I'm always really excited and happy to hear from people watching my videos. All right, I'll see you next time.